Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you do not miss any video lesson from RAU'S IAS.
Hello everybody, welcome to Daily Prelims Practice. In this particular session, we shall be taking up the discussion of the important prelims based questions from the articles that have appeared in the Hindu as well as Indian Express dated 4th of October 2022. The first question is related to the impact of the global external shocks on the Indian economy. So this particular article basically discusses as to whether the Indian economy is resilient enough to withstand the global external shocks such as the increase in the policy rates by the US Fed Bank. Now this particular article is quite important because as you can see in the previous year prelims, questions have been asked with respect to the impact of changes made by the US Fed Bank on the Indian economy. So in prelims 2021, we had this question as to what all factors affect the bond yields in India. So based upon this, let us take up this particular practice question. The question is, taper tantrums in the developing countries such as India is associated with which among the following? See, when we say taper tantrums refer to the adverse impact on the developing countries such as India when the US Fed Bank announces increase in the policy rates. So whenever the US Fed Bank announces that it is going to increase the interest rate, this in turn leads to huge outflow of FPI from India. Because of huge outflow, the rupee value would depreciate. Apart from the rupee depreciation, as there is greater outflow of FPI, the demand for the government securities reduces. This decrease in demand leads to decrease in prices of government securities. And as you know, the prices and yields of the government securities are inversely proportional, and hence the yields on the government securities would increase. So if you look at the options which is given here, the first one says sudden appreciation in the Indian rupee, which is actually wrong. Second one is decrease in the bond yields. Even this is wrong. The third one says volatility in the capital market, which is actually correct. So the right answer is C. The next question is related to the farmer producer organizations. Since September 2020, the government of India had decided to set up 10,000 FPOs. Out of these 10,000 FPOs, 100 FPOs were required to be set up in order to meet the fodder needs of the dairy farmers. But so far, not a single FPO has been set up to meet the fodder needs of the dairy farmers. Now this particular article is quite important because in the previous year prelims, questions have been asked with respect to various institutional structures such as cooperatives which have been set up in order to meet the input needs of the farmers. For example, in prelims 2020, we had a question related to cooperatives. So if you look at FPOs are also a form of cooperatives. So when you look at FPO, see in case of FPO, a group of farmers come together and this FPO can be registered as a society under the Societies Registration Act. It can also be registered as a cooperative under the Cooperative Societies Act, and it can be registered as a company under the Companies Act 2013. So if it is registered as a company, then it will be called as the farmer producer company. So if you look at the first statement here, the first statement is that the NABARD is a nodal agency for the promotion of FPOs. So it is actually the Small Farmers Agribusiness Consortium which is a nodal agency, and that is why the first statement which is given here is wrong. The second statement says that the SFAC has constituted the Produce Fund to provide the financial support to FPOs. It is not SFAC which has constituted the Produce Fund, it is rather NABARD which has set up this particular fund. Apart from the Produce Fund, NABARD has also set up Producer Organization Development Fund in order to support the farmer producer organizations within India. So the right answer in this particular case is D. The next practice question is related to the Samarth initiative, that is the National Mission on Use of Biomass in the Coal-Based Thermal Power Plants. See, when you look at the term biomass co-firing, it basically means burning biomass along with the coal in the existing thermal power plants in order to generate electricity. So through the biomass co-firing, we would be able to reduce the import of coal and at the same time efficiently manage biomass which is otherwise burnt and may lead to increase in the stubble burning. Presently, the Ministry of Power, which is implementing the Samarth initiative, has mandated that the thermal power plants should ensure 5% biomass co-firing by October 2022. Since some of the thermal power plants are yet to reach this particular target, the central government has said that those thermal power plants which will not be able to meet the target, to such thermal power plants, the coal supply would be cut off. Now, this particular Samarth initiative of the government is quite important because if you have a look at the previous year prelims questions, questions have been asked with respect to the important initiatives of the government related to the environmental conservation. For example, in prelims 2015, we had a question related to the bio toilets or the biodigesters. So based upon this, let us have a look at the question related to the biomass co-firing. The first statement is, the biomass co-firing seeks to mix the biomass pellets with coal in the existing thermal power plants to generate electricity, which is correct. Second one is, the biomass co-firing is presently implemented as part of Samarth initiative of the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. Samarth initiative is an initiative of Ministry of Power and not that of the MNRE. So accordingly, the right answer to this particular question would be A. The next question is related to the poverty within India. Now, this particular article highlights that the overall percentage of BPL population has got reduced from 55% in 1970s to 22% in the year 2011-12. In spite of decrease in the overall poverty levels, the income inequality within India has increased. Now, this particular article is quite important because in the previous year prelims, questions have been asked with respect to the poverty line estimation. So based upon this, let us have a look at the practice MCQ number 4. So when you look at the poverty line estimation in India, it is presently based upon the methodology recommended by the Suresh Tendulkar Committee. As per this particular methodology, the National Statistical Office initially carries out a survey which is referred to as the monthly per capita consumption expenditure survey. So once this particular survey is carried out, the Niti Aayog, which is the nodal agency for estimation of the BPL population in India, then estimates as to what is the percentage of population which is living below the poverty line. The Niti Aayog also estimates as to what should be the poverty line. So poverty line basically means as to how much money should the individual spend in order to meet their basic needs. So in the year 2011-12, the poverty line for the rural India was rupees 816, and for the urban India it was rupees 1000 per month. And when we say basic needs, it not only takes into account the food needs, it also takes into account the basic non-food needs such as the educational needs, health care needs, and so on. So if you look at the first statement which is given here, this first statement is wrong because apart from food, we also take into account the expenditure of the people on education as well as health. When you look at the third statement is also wrong because we have a different poverty line for rural and urban India. So accordingly, the right answer would be B. The next question is related to science and technology. This particular article highlights that the Swedish scientist Mr. Svante Pääbo has been selected for the 2022 Nobel Prize for Physiology. Mr. Svante Pääbo has sequenced the genome of Neanderthal, which is an extinct relative of the present day humans. Because of his discoveries, we are able to understand as to how the archaic gene sequences have influenced the physiology of the present day humans. Now, this particular article is quite important because, as you can see in prelims 2016, we had come across a question as to which among the following are possible through the recent developments in the field of science and technology. So based upon this previous year question, let us have a look at the practice question number 5. The question here is, with reference to the present day developments in science, which of the following is or are possible? The first one is development of models of embryos through the stem cells. See, when you look at human embryos, the human embryos are formed through the fusion of sperms and eggs. Such human embryos may be used for the purpose of research and development. And once the research and development is done on such human embryos, these human embryos are destroyed. So this destruction of these human embryos in turn leads to ethical dilemmas. So in order to avoid this particular problem, what we have is a method known as blastoids. So in this particular blastoid method, we are able to develop the models of embryos through the stem cells. So the human embryos in this particular case are not developed through fusion of sperms and eggs. Rather, they are developed from the stem cells, because of which these human embryos do not develop into full grown fetus. So once we carry out research on such human embryos can be destroyed without any ethical dimensions. So the first one is correct. The second one says gene sequencing of an extinct species, which as Mr. Swante Pebo has shown is quite possible. When you look at the third one, the third statement is wrong. In fact, the same option was provided in the Prelims 2016 as well. So the right answer in this particular case would be 1 and 2 only. Nextly, this particular article highlights that Prachand, which is an indigenously built multi-role light combat helicopter, has been inducted into the Indian Air Force. This light combat helicopter has been developed by Hindustan Aeronautics Limited as part of the project LCH. Now, if you have a look at the previous year prelims questions have been asked with respect to the important defense weapons. Accordingly, let us have a look at this practice question. The question is, consider the following pairs. First one is Prachand, light combat helicopter, which is correct as we discussed. Second one is Pinaka. Now Pinaka is a multiple rocket launcher, and this Pinaka was in news recently where India has signed an agreement with Armenia in order to export Pinaka. Third one is Swati. Now Swati is a weapon locating radar, and this Swati was also in news when India signed an agreement with Armenia in 2020 to export this weapon locating radar. So here you need to find out as to how many pairs are correctly matched. So the right answer is C, that is all the 3 pairs. The next question is related to the thoughts and philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi. Now this article is quite important because if you have a look at the previous year prelims questions are normally asked with respect to thoughts and philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi or with respect to his contribution to India's freedom struggle. So based upon the previous year prelims question, let us have a look at the practice MCQ number 7. The question is, consider the following statements regarding Mahatma Gandhi. The first statement is, Gandhi dismissed capitalism for its exploitative character and accepted Western socialism as an alternative. See, Mahatma Gandhi dismissed both capitalism as well as Western socialism. He dismissed capitalism for its exploitative character, and he also dismissed Western socialism because Western socialism as such gave much higher emphasis on heavy industrialization. So Mahatma Gandhi as such was not in the favor of giving more focus on heavy industrialization. Rather, he was more concerned about bringing about development in the field of the Indian agriculture. Secondly, Gandhi was against untouchability but supported the Varna system and wanted village to be organized around fourfold division. This statement is correct. Thirdly, Gandhi believed in decentralization of political as well as economic power. Even this statement is correct. So the right answer would be B, that is 2 and 3 only.